Good evening, and thank you so much for having me. And certainly grateful to see some of the folk who I have met over the years. And it's just great to be in a place where there are folk who love young people, who love people. And you would not be in this space, you would not be serving in the capacity in which you serve. And I do say serve because even though it is an occupation, you are yet a servant, and you would not serve unless you uh, really love people. It is a job that goes oftentimes unnoticed until you're needed at that moment when that parent needs you most. And then all of a sudden now you become their best friend. But when you've been wanting someone to be your friend and hold your hand, they were nowhere to be found. But that's why I believe that this wonderful nonprofit organization exists, because to be able to walk in your calling, your vocare, and to be able to still hold on to your faith. And not only that, but to be able to acknowledge and recognize the fact that your faith is holding on to you. Oftentimes, I tell people that our faith is not about how strong we are, because a lot of times we use that to tell people to that you got to have strong faith, and we say that and do that because we want to look good, right? We don't want to look like we're weak in our faith. But the reality is, it's not about how strong you are with your faith. It's about how strong your God is. And you are a testament to how strong your God is because you've been able to withstand the test of time. And I will say this before I get into I do want to share some words to encourage you all on tonight. But I was sharing with a group of folk on yesterday dealing with testing. And I share with them that no one who isn't gifted, no one who's not gifted, they're not tested, because the enemy is not trying to mess with anyone who doesn't pose a threat. But when you are gifted, you pose a threat to the kingdom of darkness. And those of you educators who you're walking with God and God is walking with you, you are gifted not just with the ability to teach, not just with the ability to sing and to dance, clap your hands, or whatever your specific skill is, but the mere fact that you're so gifted and so powerful that you're able to love people even when it feels like you're not being loved in return. My friends, that in and unto itself is a powerful gift. So you ought to just thank God for the giftedness that God has blessed you with. And so the next time you feel that you're just being tested, it looks like you got a test on every side, a trial on every side, just know that it's only because the enemy knows how gifted you are. I am a son of an educator who taught in the Chicago public school system for over 35 years. And I remember hearing stories from my mother all the time about how it was teaching in the school system. My mother had to face various difficulties towards the latter part of her career, not because of what was happening in the school district, but just mainly because of the vicissitudes of life. And those of you on here tonight, you understand that life comes with ups and downs. And the old songwriter used to say it like this, that I've had some good days and some bad days, but those good days, they outweigh the bad days. And my mother had some very challenging days in her latter years. And it came mainly because after working 8 hours in the school system, she would end up taking care of her mother and father in the evening. She was the primary caregiver. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is because many of you all have lives that requires and demands so much of you outside of the classroom. But yet you show up every day, you still show up to take care and to pour into someone else's child when sometimes no one is pouring into you. That's why we ought not take this space for granted, because this is an opportunity to be replenished, to be revived, to be refreshed. Because the more you expense, the more it is that someone's going to need what you've just expensed. Someone once told me that you ought to count it a blessing to be used, even when you feel like you're overworked and underpaid, because no one who is not valuable, no one who doesn't have anything to offer, they're not going to be used. Some of you in your classrooms, you will find that individual, that one student who's going to help make your job a little bit easier. And you have made up in your mind when you've written your lesson plans, that's who I'm going to use. Well, don't you know that that's the same way God looked at you and I? God said that, you know what, I can use her, I can use him because they have something that can be a blessing to someone else. And whenever you have something that can be a blessing to someone else, a door will be open for you to be used. Well, brothers and sisters, my mother, towards that latter part of her career, she told me, she said, Alan, after working all these years in the school system, I think it's time for me to retire. And so she was looking into the retirement age at the time to see if she would qualify to retire and get her full benefits. And I remember having this conversation with her on a Friday night. She says, I'm going to go downtown on a Thursday night. She said, I'm going to go downtown Friday. I'm going to leave work early and see if I qualified to retire early. Well, on that Saturday, after she had gone downtown, we talked about her making that trip, and I asked her, I said, did you get the information that you needed? She said, well, I got information. It wasn't necessarily what I needed, but it was all for naught. So she was a little discouraged. But Saturday came, and Saturday is the day that she's typically doing her errands, taking care of her mom and dad. And I had a friend who needed me to run an errand for them, and it required me to get on a computer. So I said, well, let me stop by my mother's house. I was nearby, and maybe I can get on her computer to see if I can help my friend out. Well, when I pull up to my mother's house, I see her car in the driveway. The car is there. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. And it's strange because usually by that time, my mother is out and about doing either taking care of her business or taking care of her parents. So I'm a little bit bewildered, but I go ahead and open the door. As soon as I open the door, I see my mother laying on her back in her kitchen. My mother had passed away from what I know now is it was a heart attack. But at the moment, I didn't know what had happened. And trust me, I'm going somewhere with this story. I'm not trying to bring us down, but there's a blessing in this, I guarantee you. When I saw my mother laying there, I looked around the house looking for any signs of distress, and there was no signs of distress. It was just my mother laying on the ground. She had poured a bowl of cereal and never poured the milk. But while she was laying there, her hand was clenched, and in that hand, she had a bag of grains that she was going to pour on top of her cereal. Now, in this moment, I'm hurt. I'm angry. I'm upset with God because I had a whole list of people that I'm like, God, it ain't her time. I got some folk who I can give you that you can call up out of here, but certainly not my mother. But I looked at her hands and I saw that grain, and I heard a still small voice say, Alan, your mother fulfilled her purpose. Now it's time for you to fulfill yours. And these grains that she has in her hands, it is symbolic of the seeds that she has planted in you. Now, at the moment, I didn't want to take those words. I'm like, I need my mama. I want my mama. But as days went by, I continued to hold on to what I heard in that moment. And I realized my mother, who was looking to retire and was going to go ahead and begin to do the paperwork and begin to retire on that upcoming Monday, God decided to retire her in the manner in which God wanted to retire her. What are you saying, preacher? What are you trying to let us know in this? Well, I want you to know that there's a text, there's a scripture that tells us to don't get weary in well-doing. Why? Because you will reap in due season if you faint not, if you don't quit. In all my mother was doing, in all of her well-doing, my mother left here knowing that she never quit. She was looking to retire, but she was never looking to quit. And you educators on this call, I want you to know that you can't quit. I know others have quit. And because so many teachers have quit around the country, there's a shortage of teachers. And now you are overworked, you're overwhelmed, and you feel like you got so many responsibilities. I want you to know that perhaps the reason why you have those responsibilities is because God is preparing you, watch this, for your due season. Due season, that season where blessings are due to you. Due season where there's something that God has in store for you that's due to you. Due season, what is due to you? There are some things that's due to you that you couldn't get last year, 10 years ago, but now perhaps you're coming up, approaching that due season, but if you quit now, you will never reap what God had in store for you for due season. Number two, the reason why you can't quit, because quit is a sign of defeat. But I want you to know on this call, you may be depleted, you may have been expensed, but listen, you are not defeated. The fact that I know, the reason why I know that you are not defeated is because you have the audacity to get on a call with Teachers Who Pray and give God praise, glory, and honor. That's a sign, brothers and sisters, that you are not defeated. And lastly, the very reason why you can't quit is because someone else is depending upon you. Someone else's child is depending upon you. Someone else's parent is depending upon you. When my mother passed away, the thing that blessed me the most was the cards that I got from all of the parents of the students in which she taught. I got this one card that blessed me to no end. The one card read from the mother. She said, "Alan, your mother was like a parent to me." And oftentimes she would tell me that there were days that she wanted to quit. She says, "But Alan, your mother was blessed. And I'm so glad that she didn't quit, because if she had have quit, I'm not sure that my son would have graduated." I want to tell somebody on this call that the reason why you're still doing what you're doing is because someone needs to graduate. Someone needs to go to another level. Someone needs to go to a place that God has in store for them, but they can't get there unless you continue to do what God has called you to do. I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be strengthened. I want you to know that God has given you everything you need so that you can get everything that He has in store for you in your due season. If I wanted to tag this message, the only thing that I would give it is simply this: don't quit. Those two words. If we were in church, I would tell you to look at your neighbor and say, "Neighbor, don't you quit. Don't you quit." Somebody ought to just type that. Don't quit. Somebody's depending upon you. God bless you.